Castro was making a speech to a large assembly, and he was going on at great length, and then a voice out in the crowd said, "Peanuts, popcorn, Cracker Jack." And he went on speaking, and again the voice said, "Peanuts, popcorn, Cracker Jack." And about the fourth time this happened, he stopped in his regular speech, and he said, the next time he says that, he says, "I'm going to find out who he is and kick him all the way to Miami." And everybody in the crowd said, "Peanuts, popcorn, Cracker Jack."
Good morning. It's Friday, Policecraft Friday, April the 19th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have the patriotic shorts, motivation, Bishop Barron, Ayn Rand, the 33 strategies of war, and policecraft. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you. And now, some auctioneering.
$20 David, get $25 David, get 25 about $30 David, get 30. So you want to learn to talk like an auctioneer. Let's start this thing over again, this time with the numbers. This is going to be Learning to Talk Like an Auctioneer, Part 1. So while most young auctioneers just want to talk fast, they're missing the basic fundamental, and that's the numbers. Let's work on that real quick. And for the purpose of these lessons, we're going to do 1 to 10, because I believe if you can do 1 to 10, you can do any number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now let's double punch. 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5, 5, 6, 6, 7, 7, 8, 8, 9, 9, 10, 10. Let's do it again. 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5, 5, 6, 6, 7, 7, 8, 8, 9, 9, 10, 10. So just remember, in order to have that smooth rhythmic chant, we've got to start with the foundation, and that's the numbers.
You'll see an auctioneer and they'll be selling, and it might sound something like this. I'm 25, but to give 30, 30, but to give 30 now, 35, but to give 40 now, 45, but to give 50, 50, but to give 50 now, 55 and 60 here, and 60 now, 65 and 70, right? And that's a chant. And it's fun, and it's rhythmic and energizing, and it gets people engaged, and it's a lot of fun. And people go, how do you do that? Well, today I'm going to show you. And it's a lot easier than you think. Now, that doesn't mean it doesn't require some practice. But here's what we're going to do. We're just going to talk about what's called a 3-part chant. And so what you have first is you have a number, and that number is typically the amount that you have. And then you have a filler word, and then you have the number, which is the number you're asking for. So it's the number that you have, a filler word, and the number that you're asking for.
25, 35. I got 25, now 35, 50, now 60, 60, now 70, now 70, now 80, 90, 80, 90,
Red Lobster gift card coming in. It's an auction too. Red Lobsters, $25. I get 30, 35, 35. Sold it. $30. You bought it. Buy number is 1909. Number 1909.
You buy it without sales tax. Today you buy it without going to the shop and ordering. Today you don't have to wait 60 days until you get it. Today we don't charge no buyer's premiums. It all sounds like a deal to me. Yeah, $375, $400. The price is right. Thank you. Now quarter. Now, sir, did you hear all that I was spinning? Same applies to you. $400 for a quarter. $400 for a quarter. $400 down a quarter. $400 down a quarter. The more you pay for it, the more sales tax you save. For a quarter. $400 down a quarter. $400 down a quarter. $25. But you down pay for it. So $400 right here, big and a good bidder. 173. 173. Thank you. Now I can buy too. I got an account. Hey, you around here? First time I can own an account. All right, 333. Did you lose your number? 333. Did you lose your number? Thanks, I can use that then. Come in handy. All right, here.
Tricycle, I'm made a bag, not a bag of $100, and a 50, I'm made a bag of 20, 30. Yeah, 20 wasn't a meter bag, 20, not 20, 20, 20, I'm meter bag, brand new, get charged there, 20, not 20, 20, 20, but bomb day, 20, get 10, 20, 20, 30, not 20, not 30, not 30, 30, not 30, and 75, $85, 85, and $100, I'm a bond, I'm a dollar, I'm not a bed at 85, and I'm a bond, I'm a dollar, I'm not a bed at $85, and $100 down, and so you wait your 85.
So here we go. Hit $5. I'm going to be getting a bit $5. Hit $5. Thank you. $6. Hit 10 or 6 here. I'm going to be getting a bit $5, $5.5. Hit $5 here. $5.5. Now $6. 6. I'm going to bid 575. I got 5.5. 575. Bid 5.5. You're going to bid 550 bid. You're going to bid 75. You're going to bid 575. Anybody else? You're going to bid all done. You're going to bid through. 75. $6. $6, sir. I'm going to be 6. Now quarter, sir. I'm going to bid 6. You're going to bid 25. 6 and a quarter. He's a good one. 6 and a quarter. You're going to be a 6. You're going to bid 25. But don't lose him. 6 and a quarter. 6 and a quarter. I got 6 bids. 6 and a quarter. Now half, sir. I'm going to be 6 and 50 on them. You're going to be 6 here and a half and a half and a half. You're going to be 6 and a half. Now 75. 675. 6. Haven't spent a dollar yet. 675. It's 6 here and 75. I'm going to be painless so far. 675. It's $6 and a half. To be getting it all done. You get it all through. 6 and a half. 675. Sold it right there. $6.50. Put it on 694.
So let's get the auction underway. On the first cow here, who's got 55, 55, 55, 55, no, say no, 7, 7, 7, 7, 8, 9, 9, 9, 9, 59, 60, 60, 60, 60, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3, 8, 4, 4 now, 4 now, 5, 5 now, 4, 4, 4 now, half, 4, 4 now, 5, 5, 5, 55, 5 and a half, 5 now, quarter, half, 5, 75 now, 75, 65 now, 75, 75, sold your way, 65 and a half, 21. Andy Rock, 21. Rockstar, 21. Cattle, and we got some cows here to start. Who's got 72? 72. Taylor, have them, but 3, and a half, but half, but more now, 4 half, 4 now, half, 4 now, quarter, half, 475, 4 now, 5, 5 now, quarter, 5 and a quarter, 5 and a half, 75, 5 now, 6 and a quarter, quarter, half, 6 now, 75, 75, 77, quarter, quarter, half, 7 half, 75, 78, 8 now, quarter, quarter, half, 8, 75, 9, 79, a quarter, 9 now, quarter, sold your way, 79, JBS number 1, JBS number 1, thank you.
500, 500, 200, 3, 6 on the 7. I say that it is 700 and a half. And now 8 now half, 8 now 9, 50, and now $1,000, now 11, now 12, at 12, 12, now 1,300, at 15 on the 12, 13 there, 30, 12, now 1,300, I now 14, have a 14, you want her now, at 14, now 13, now 15, 1,500, have it here, 1,500, I get a 14, how to get it now, 15, now 15, 15, how to get it now, 1,500 on up there, 14.
And that was some auctioneering. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, the patriotic shorts.
To excel in battle, the Spitfire needed the perfect wing, and there was some deliberation on the shape the Spitfire's wing would take, with some early designs like this one from 1934 showing a straight taper, unlike the iconic elliptical wing it eventually took. This would have been vastly easier to manufacture, but the shape a wing takes has a huge effect on performance, in particular lift distribution, and the elliptical wing provides the ideal lift distribution to minimize induced drag. Induced drag occurs when high-pressure air from underneath the wing travels to mix with the low-pressure air above the wing, over the wing tip. This creates a vortice at the wing tip that saps kinetic energy away from the plane. This elliptical lift distribution minimizes this effect.
Fortunately, I survived, and I was put in for a Distinguished Service Cross by Hal Moore. Some dodo at the Army turned it down. You know, I'm 86 years old, so when I go to my grave here in a couple of years or whenever, he didn't get to make a rat's ass, and Lord didn't ask me what medals I had. But I resent the fact that some guy at DA overrode the desires of my battalion commander, eventually a 3-star general, who was really a super soldier.
To that end, the crew of the guided missile destroyer USS Kearney, operating in the northern Red Sea earlier today, shot down 3 land attack cruise missiles and several drones that were launched by Houthi forces in Yemen. This action was a demonstration of the integrated air and missile defense architecture that we have built in the Middle East and that we are prepared to utilize whenever necessary to protect our partners and our interests in this important region. There were no casualties to U.S. forces and none that we know of to any civilians on the ground. Information about these engagements is still being processed. We cannot say for certain what these missiles and drones were targeting, but they were launched from Yemen, heading north along the Red Sea, potentially towards targets in Israel. Our defensive response was one that we would have taken for any similar threat in the region, where we're able to do so against our interest personnel and our partners. This attack may be ongoing, so if we have more information to share, we will.
The farmer came to the door with his wife. I got my map out, and he knew what I was trying to ask. I said, St. Comme de Mont? He said, oui. He also pointed. I oriented the map a bit more. I next said, Carentan. He started thumping on the floor. Oui, Carentan. I said, oh my God, we got to get the hell out of here right now. We are in the middle of Carentan. I know where I am, so I said, boys, let's pack up and go.
And the threats to our nations, they don't sleep. They're watching our every move. Iran, Russia, China, North Korea, ISIS, Al-Qaeda. They may be watching this right now. Our military should not be mistaken for a cable news gabfest show. We don't care what you look like. We don't care who you voted for, who you worship, what you worship, who you love. It doesn't matter if your dad left you millions when he died or if you knew who your father was. We have been honed into a machine of lethal moving parts that you would be wise to avoid if you know what's good for you. We will not be intimidated. We will not back down. We've seen war. We don't want war. But if you want war with the United States of America, there's one thing I can promise you, so help me God. Someone else will raise your sons and daughters.
I was leading a flight of 3 or 4 and another flight from a different squadron, and I'm leading them home. And we're coming out, and I'm looking up ahead and down, and I say, oh, Jesus, there's a poor old B-17 way up there, and engines smoking and kind of staggering along. I says, but hey, come on, guys, let's go over there and go down and take him out to the water. So just as he's going this way, just as we're coming down here to join up with him, here comes 3 ME-109s over here, bellied up towards us. They couldn't see us. They're going after the B-17. I'm sure they didn't see us because there was 7 of us. And I said, okay, guys, I'm leading this whole pack. I said, one of those is mine.
The Panzerkeil was an offensive formation typically employed by tanks, supported by Panzergrenadier mechanized infantry and aircraft during World War II. The tanks would perform a wedge formation, with the heaviest armor forming the tip. The heaviest tanks would bear the brunt of the enemy anti-tank fire, leaving the more vulnerable tanks safe. This also forced one's opponent to constantly adjust their ranges due to the depth of the formation. During Operation Citadel, part of the Battle of Kursk, the Panzerkeil enabled Generaloberst Hermann Hoff's 4th Panzer Army to break through the Soviet defenses. During the Battle of Kursk, the Tiger I heavy tank would typically form the tip, Panther medium tanks the base, and Panzer IV or II medium tanks the wings. General Feldmarschall Walter Model's 9th Army sector also attempted a Panzerkeil offensive, but failed to make a breakthrough during the Battle of Kursk.
What happens to retired fighter jets? Let me explain. The entire process is known as mothballing. The jets are drained of all fluids and preserved to keep them in a condition that would make it easy to put them back into service if needed. But where are all these retired fighter jets kept? Well, this is the Boneyard at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Arizona. This area is home to countless famous aircraft, including F-4 Phantoms, B-52 bombers, F-16s, F-15s, and A-10 Warthogs. Since the Boneyard is located in an area with low humidity, it is ideal for storing jets. However, in Europe, air storage is not practical because of the moist climate. This means climate-controlled hangars are needed for long-term storage, which are much more expensive. The F-4 Phantom was retired many years ago by the U.S. Navy and Air Force, but other countries like Greece still operate the F-4 today. Because of the Boneyard, the United States was able to sell parts from a retired fighter jet.
So here we are at the F4E. This is a leading edge flap. This is where we have a soft wing. Now, in the hard wing, we didn't have this, okay? And you and I remember when we flew hard wings. So if you're pulling back on the stick and you pull in G's, and if you put in any aileron, we had what they call adverse yaw, and that airplane could go out of control, okay?
It would go out of control.
Out of control, no doubt about it. So we pull in a stick, and then we'd roll the airplane with rudder. And if you went anywhere left or right on the aileron, you get this adverse yaw, and you put the airplane out of control. This solved that problem. So when we were pulling back on a stick and you put an aileron, you didn't put the airplane out of control. So this was a big, big change between the hard wing and the soft wing.
And it's an important change because in pilot training, you learn to use the stick left and right with the ailerons to roll.
Yeah.
So you go from there where you've learned how to fly one way to this airplane where if you fly that way, it's not going to end well.
Army Veteran Command Sergeant Major Benny Adkins earned the Medal of Honor for his actions in Camp Ah Chau, Vietnam, during 9 to 12 March 1966. Sergeant First Class Benny G. Adkins distinguished himself by acts of gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty while serving as an intelligence sergeant with Detachment A-102, 5th Special Forces Group, 1st Special Forces, during combat operations against an armed enemy at Camp Ah Chau, Republic of Vietnam, from March 9th to 12th, 1960. When the camp was attacked by a large North Vietnamese and Viet Cong force in the early morning hours, Sergeant First Class Adkins rushed through intense enemy fire and manned a mortar position continually adjusting fire for the camp, despite incurring wounds as the mortar pit received several direct hits from enemy mortars. Upon learning that several soldiers were wounded near the center of camp, he temporarily turned the mortar over to another soldier, ran through exploding mortar rounds, and dragged several comrades to safety. As the hostile fire subsided, Sergeant First Class Adkins exposed himself to sporadic sniper fire while carrying his wounded comrades to the camp dispensary. When Sergeant First Class Adkins and his group of defenders came under heavy small arms fire from members of the Civilian Irregular Defense Group that had defected to fight with the North Vietnamese, he maneuvered outside the camp to evacuate a seriously wounded American and draw fire.
And that was the Patriotic Shorts. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now a little bit of motivation.
And what is it that makes it worth fighting for? When you're getting trampled by life, when everything is working against you, when anything that could go wrong does go wrong, what makes it worth it to you to keep pushing forward? What keeps you going?
I don't know what you're going through right now, but I need you to remember, if you can find a why for living, you can endure almost any how.
When you're getting attacked by life, you're going through the worst pain you've ever felt, and you can find those reasons that make you strong enough to keep going, you will find a way through it. You'll shift your inner dialogue from, why does this have to happen to me? I don't deserve this. I can't handle this, to good. I'm glad this happened. This is a chance to get better. This is a chance to improve myself and my situation. I can do this. I can handle this. I got what it takes.
We all want to be a beast, but do you know what a beast is? A beast is someone who can go through hell and be grateful that their legs are working. A beast is someone who's lost everything, but is grateful for the opportunity to get everything back and get even more. A beast is someone who can hit rock bottom and can say, Roger that. I'm going to harness this. It is only up from here. I'm going to come back even stronger.
What most people do is, once you get stressed in the process, you don't want it anymore. You give up, you fold, you quit, you're through. But in order to develop, in order to become the best version of yourself, stress is necessary. See, a seed has got to have dirt on top of it in order to grow and develop. Dirt builds character. Dirt gives you the push-through factor. dirt makes you fight through it when you don't feel like fighting anymore.
Everybody gets dirt put on them at one point or another. And that's the moment. That teaches you to withstand it. It gives you something to push through.
So when you feel like giving up, don't. When it looks like you're not going to make it, keep going. When they tell you you can't, ignore them. When they tell you you're not going to make it, do not believe them. You got to become fucking relentless. Never stop, never quit.
The most important thing is your passion. You win with your heart, not your head. You win on emotion, not on logic. The most important thing to winning is the power of believing in you. The power of believing that you can win. The power of believing that good things will happen to you. The power of believing that you're special.
You must believe that you can. And once you want something and believe that you can get it, you got to block out all the noise around you that's going to tell you you can't do it. Don't listen to all that Listen to yourself, that voice within you that tells you that it is possible, that there is a way for you to be successful in this business, in this career, in this life.
In this situation that you're in, your life is at stake. You are fighting for your life every day by the way that you live it, the mark that you're going to leave, the legacy that you're going to leave. All that is going to come back to you. That is your life. So don't sit back and be on the defense and allow life to happen to you. Don't do that. Instead, go on the offense. Go on the attack. Become the aggressor. Be the one that life is afraid to mess with.
And remember that everybody won't make it to your next level, because everybody won't be willing to sacrifice what it takes to create greatness. This is your journey. Struggle is a part of it. Losses are a part of it. Setbacks are a part of it. Sometimes you have to go through your worst just to become your best. Sometimes you have to lose everything just to gain everything. Don't let it discourage you. Let it encourage you.
Fail your way to success. Fail your way forward. Failure is only when you stop trying. Failure is just another step in the staircase to go higher. You will never grow without growing pains. The valley might be ugly, but I promise you, the peak is beautiful, and it will all be worth it. So don't ever stop climbing, because the only way it works is if you work. The only way you progress is if you proceed. So you rise above anything or anyone that's in your way that's trying to prevent you from being great. You know how you get confidence? By attacking your fear. Attacking those hard things you know you gotta face and overcoming them. There's a big misconception out there that people who are successful are not afraid, which is not true. People who are successful are oftentimes the most afraid. They're afraid of failure, so they do everything they can to escape it. So they're going to run the hardest. They're going to run the fastest. And they're going to be the ones who are going to take every single action that they have to take to make sure they get where they need to be. So I don't want you to wait any longer. Don't worry about the how or what ifs. Make a list. Put your back up against the wall and execute on that damn list. Do that every single day, and you will be where you want to be. I guarantee it.
The journey's not easy. Everyone's hot off the start, but after a month or so into it, with the wear and tear and the grind starts to hit you, you start losing focus on the horizon, do you not? You get caught away in the daily hiccups, the ups and downs, and the wear and tear. And you focus on the speed bumps, the daily activities, losing sight of their true purpose.
Most of you won't be successful because when you're studying and you get tired, you quit. Don't cry to give up. Cry to keep going. Don't cry to quit. You already in pain. You already hurt. Get a reward from it.
The difference between a winner and a loser, the failure's there every single time. It's just the winner gets back up and does it again and does it again until it goes his way.
I don't care how hard you fall. I don't care if nobody don't believe in you. It only takes you believing in yourself to get this thing done. And listen to me, it ain't failure if you learn from it, baby. So if you fall on your back so you can look up. Because if you can look up, then you can get up. I dare you to take a little pain. I dare you. At the end of pain is success.
If you can stay in the race, if you can stay in the fight, then you can dictate your own future.
I dare you to fail. I dare you to take that same class over and over again. I dare you to stop dropping classes like you soft.
See, getting what you want is up to you.
You can turn your life around if you change your attitude. You change your attitude, you change your altitude.
Your mind and attitude is all you need to be successful. That's all you need. You don't need to be born with a silver spoon in your mouth. You don't need money. You don't even need folk that like you. As long as you believe in you, you got the right mindset, you got the right attitude, we can make it happen. I don't care what's going on around you, because it's not what happens around you that determines your success. It's what happens inside you. And you can't control the elements, but you can control your attitude and you can control your mindset. And I'm telling you right now, don't give up. I'm telling you right now, don't give in. Get through it. And so God is allowing you to go up the rough side of the mountain, not so he can hurt you or break you. He's trying to redesign me. I'm telling you right now because I care about you. I'm telling you right now because I've been there. I've done that. You've been in it for 3 years and you about to quit. Oh, you've been doing it for 5 years and it don't look like you think. You put all your money in it. You put all your time in it. People looking at you crazy. 5 years you've invested. Oh, you put too much in it to quit now? Oh. It doesn't look like you think. You didn't get the grades you thought you were going to get. So maybe I'm not meant to be a lawyer. Hold. Lay hold of it. You lay hold of it. And when that thing tells you to quit, you look at it in his eye and say, I ain't going nowhere. I will break you before you break me. You will not defeat me. You will not destroy me. You've been through so much hell. You going to quit now? And when you get to success, it's not about skill. When you get to a certain level of success, it's about stamina. You won't break me. You can't take me. I'm fought too long. I'm fought too hard. I'm unbreakable now.
You get one shot. Opportunity comes once in a lifetime. You better make the kind of decisions that's going to take you to the NBA. You better make the right decisions that's going to take you to the NFL. You better make the right decisions that are going to land you the next best rapper, the next business tycoon. It's one thing to talk about your destiny, but it's another thing to wake up when you know you're supposed to wake up, to write when you don't feel like writing that paper, to say no to that party, saying no to quitting when you still got 100 more shots to make, saying no when your body said don't stop, but you put in 50 more push-ups. You can't just talk about it. You gotta be about it.
Download this video and audio by becoming a member.
And that was Thank you. And now, the Daily Law for April the 19th.
April 19th. Tailor your flattery. Courtiers have to gain the attention of leaders and ingratiate themselves in some way. The most immediate way to do this is through flattery, since leaders inevitably have large egos and a hunger to have their high self-opinion validated. Flattery can do wonders, but it comes with risks. If it is too obvious, the flatterer looks desperate, and it is easy to see through the strategy. The best courtiers know how to tailor their flattery to the particular insecurities of the leader and to make it less direct. They focus on flattering qualities in the leader that no one else has bothered to pay attention to, but that need extra validation. If everyone praises the leader's business acumen, but not his or her cultural refinement, you will want to aim at the latter. Mirroring the leader's ideas and values, without using their exact words, can be a highly effective form of indirect flattery. Daily Law. Overt flattery can be effective, but has its limits. It is too direct and obvious and looks bad to other courtiers. Discreet flattery, tailored to the insecurities of your target, is much more powerful. The Laws of Human Nature, 14. Resist the downward pull of the group, the law of conformity.
And that was the Daily Law for April the 19th from the book The Daily Laws by Robert Greene. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Bishop Robert Barron.
You want to be happy? Be a saint. What does it mean precisely to be a saint? Well, a saint's someone who's holy, okay? What does it mean to be holy? To be holy means to follow the will of God, okay? What's the will of God? Love. God is love. To love is to will the good of the other. Okay, there you got it. To be a saint is someone who habitually wills the good of the other. A saint is someone in whom God is dwelling, in whom the Spirit is alive. Okay, what if you thought of your whole life now under that rubric? My whole life is to be attuned to the path of love, willing the good of the other. What if I woke up every morning and said, that's what I'm going to be about today? Everything else, sure, I'll do all kinds of things, but all of it under the rubric, under the aegis of willing the good of the other.
And that was Bishop Robert Barron. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now the Ayn Rand thought of the day. Quote, if parasitism, favoritism, corruption, and greed for the unearned did not exist, a mixed economy would bring them into existence. Unquote. And that was the Ayn Rand thought of the day. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now we pick up where we left off with the 33 strategies of war.
Chapter 24. Take the line of least expectation. The ordinary, extraordinary strategy. People expect your behavior to conform to known patterns and conventions. Your task as a strategist is to upset their expectations, surprise them, and chaos and unpredictability, which they try desperately to keep at bay, enter their world, and in the ensuing mental disturbance, their defenses are down and they are vulnerable. First, do something ordinary and conventional to fix their image of you. Then hit them with the extraordinary. The terror is greater for being so sudden. Never rely on an unorthodox strategy that worked before. It is conventional the second time around. Sometimes the ordinary is extraordinary because it is unexpected. Unconventional warfare. Thousands of years ago, military leaders, aware of the incredibly high stakes involved in war, would search high and low for anything that could bring their army an advantage on the battlefield. Some generals, who were particularly clever, would devise novel troop formations or an innovative use of infantry or cavalry. The newness of the tactic would prevent the enemy from anticipating it. Being unexpected, it would create confusion in the enemy. An army that gained the advantage of surprise in this way could often leverage it into victory on the battlefield and perhaps a string of victories. The enemy, however, would work hard to come up with a defense against the new strategy, whatever it was, and would often find one quite fast. So what once brought brilliant success and was the epitome of innovation, soon no longer worked, and in fact became conventional. Furthermore, in the process of working out a defense against a novel strategy, the enemy itself would often be forced to innovate. Now it was their turn to introduce something surprising and horribly effective, and so the cycle would go on. War has always been ruthless. Nothing stays unconventional for long. It is either innovate or die. In the 18th century, nothing was more startling than the tactics of the Prussian King Frederick the Great. To top Frederick's success, French military theorists devised radical new ideas that were finally tested on the battlefield by Napoleon. By 1806, Napoleon crushed the Prussians, who were still using the once unconventional tactics of Frederick the Great, now grown stale, at the Battle of Jena-Auerstedt. The Prussians were humiliated by their defeat. Now it was up to them to innovate. They studied in depth Napoleon's success, adapted his best strategies, and took them further, creating the seeds for the formation of the German General Staff. This new Prussian army played a large role in the defeat of Napoleon at Waterloo and went on to dominate the military scene for decades. In modern times, the constant challenge to top the enemy with something new and unconventional has taken a turn into dirty warfare. Loosening the codes of honor and morality that in the past limited what a general could do, at least to some extent, modern armies have slowly embraced the idea that anything goes. Guerrilla and terrorist tactics have been known since ancient times. Now they have become not only more common, but more strategic and refined. Propaganda, disinformation, psychological warfare, deception, and political means of waging war have all become active ingredients in any unconventional strategy. A counter-strategy usually develops to deal with the latest in dirty warfare, but it often involves falling to the enemy's level, fighting fire with fire. The dirty enemy adapts by sinking to a dirtier level still, creating a downward spiral. This dynamic is particularly intense in warfare, but it permeates every aspect of human activity. If you are in politics and business, and your opponents or competitors come up with a novel strategy, you must adapt it for your own purposes, or better, top it. Their once new tactic becomes conventional and ultimately useless. Our world is so fiercely competitive that one side will almost always end up resorting to something dirty, something outside earlier codes of accepted behavior. Ignore this spiral out of a sense of morality or pride, and you put yourself at a severe disadvantage. You are called to respond, in all likelihood to fight a little dirty yourself. The spiral dominates not just politics or business, but culture as well, with its desperate search for the shocking and novel to gain attention and win momentary acclaim. Anything goes. The speed of the process has grown exponentially with time. What was unconventional in the arts a few years ago now seems unbearably trite and the height of conformity. What we consider unconventional has changed over the years, but the laws that make unconventionality effective, being based on elemental psychology, are timeless. And these immutable laws are revealed in the history of warfare. Almost 2,500 years ago, the great Chinese strategist Sun Tzu expressed their essence in his discussion of ordinary and extraordinary means. His analysis is as relevant to modern politics and culture as it is to warfare, whether clean or dirty. And once you understand the essence of unconventional warfare, you will be able to use it in your daily life. Unconventional warfare has 4 main principles, as gleaned from the great practitioners of the art. Work outside the enemy's experience. Principles of war are based on precedent. A kind of canon of strategies and counter-strategies develops over the centuries, and since war is so dangerously chaotic, strategists come to rely on these principles for lack of anything else. They filter what's happening now through what happened in the past. The armies that have shaken the world, though, have always found a way to operate outside the canon, and thus outside the enemy's experience. This ability imposes chaos and disorder on the enemy, which cannot orient itself to novelty and collapses in the process. Your task as a strategist is to know your enemies well, then use your knowledge to contrive a strategy that goes outside their experience. What they might have read or heard about matters less than their personal experience, which dominates their emotional lives and determines their responses. When the Germans invaded France in 1940, the French had second-hand knowledge of their blitzkrieg style of warfare from their invasion of Poland the year before, but had never experienced it personally, and were overwhelmed. Once a strategy is used and is no longer outside your enemy's experience, though, it will not have the same effect if repeated. Unfold the extraordinary out of the ordinary. To Sun Tzu and the ancient Chinese, doing something extraordinary had little effect without a setup of something ordinary. You had to mix the two, to fix your opponent's expectations with some banal, ordinary maneuver, a comfortable pattern that they would then expect you to follow. With the enemy sufficiently mesmerized, you would then hit it with the extraordinary, a show of stunning force from an entirely new angle. Framed by the predictable, the blow would have double the impact. The unconventional maneuver that confused enemies, though, would have become conventional the second or third time around. So the wily general might then go back to the ordinary strategy that he had used earlier to fix their attention, and use it for his main attack, for that would be the last thing the enemy would expect. And so the ordinary and the extraordinary are effective only if they play off each other in a constant spiraling manner. This applies to culture as much as to war. To gain attention with some cultural product, you have to create something new, but something with no reference to ordinary life is not in fact unconventional, but merely strange. What is truly shocking and extraordinary unfolds out of the ordinary. The intertwining of the ordinary and extraordinary is the very definition of surrealism. Act crazy like a fox. Despite appearances, a lot of disorder and irrationality lurks beneath the surface of society and individuals.
And that was the first part of chapter 24, Take the Line of Least Expectation, from the 33 Strategies of War by Robert Greene. Back in a minute. Thank you. If you're a Democrat, you need to switch parties, become Republican, vote Republican, because everything the Democrats do backfires. For instance, pollution. The Democrats do things that guarantee that there's going to be an increase in pollution rather than a decrease in pollution. For instance, when they're doing road diets to make the roads smaller and narrower to get people out of their cars, instead, what's happening is that all these cars and buses are taking longer to get to their destinations. The longer they spend on the road, the more they pollute. Think about it. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now from the book called Blocking Brainwashing. Got Undermining Defensive Barriers to Subversion and the Social Strategy of Conformity. The U.S. was being taken down by the undermining of two of its chief group psychological strengths, self-reliance and individual integrity. Since the 1920s, the communists had recognized American strengths and turned them into weaknesses. This was exploited to effect a complete change in the national character of the American psyche. The Social Strategy of Conformity. As I wrote in How to Manipulate Everyone, etc., the leadership selection criteria in the United States changed dramatically before World War II, mainly due to the influence of socialist professors within the U.S. Armed Forces. Up until the 1920s, the U.S. model of leadership was based on what were called leadership qualities, namely, the ability to get new things done. It was the individual's own personality and attributes that led to his promotion or advancement, at least as a primary guiding principle. We may simply call this individual merit, the idea that some people are better at doing things than others. By the 1950s, personnel departments did not even consider merit as a guiding principle. The key hiring and firing policy had become conformity. Does this person do as he is told? Without question. This was ultimately a highly dysgenic assault. Those who were conformists would become more successful and therefore more likely to attract mates and breed. The American rugged individualist would be bred out of the gene pool. A social version of the rape of the Sabine women. Men were sought for promotion because they had get along with everybody mentality. Hardly a traditional leadership criteria. In fact, quite the opposite. Even as America was becoming the premier world power, the psychological seeds were being sown that would ultimately lead to her downfall. Almost 100 years after the Bolshevik Revolution, America is a shadow of her former self, and it is a tragedy. This conformity mindset is created by making a person wish at all costs to avoid being antisocial, that is, to think for themselves. This will be explained more fully later in this book, especially by studying its application in post-World War II China. If a conformist falls into a position where he is ruled or has power pressure from authority applied to him, he will fold without resistance. His highest value is to go along with anything. A conformist is simply a person without any solid value system of their own, a person without principles. In fact, as in communist China by the 1950s, the worst social sin in the United States was to be regarded as antisocial. This is best illustrated by the so-called U.S. brainwashing victims during the Korean War. These men denounced the U.S. on Korean radio. The reason they did so is that American educators had primed these young men to be people whose highest virtue was to get along with anybody, even the devil himself. For this to occur, the values of young Americans had already been so altered as to make the brainwashing by their communist captors the mere tip over the edge. If you remove a person's values, they enter a highly suggestible floating state. It just takes a nudge from someone who claims to have a new set of values to fill the empty void. The West, what is left of it, is doomed unless it rediscovers the difference between right and wrong. The war on the mind is, at heart, a war of morality versus immorality. And that was the latest from How to Block Brainwashing. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Stuart Varney's My Take.
And now this. President Biden's Mideast policy is a failure. That is my opinion. When he took office, he reversed President Trump's policies, and it's been downhill ever since. Trump had Iran in a box. Oil revenue cut, its territory droned, the Iranian people in revolt. Then Biden tried to open up the nuclear deal that Trump had stopped. He made concessions to the mullahs to keep them at the negotiating table. He let them ignore sanctions, and the money rolled in. They used that money to develop their nuclear capabilities. They used it to buy rockets for Hamas and Hezbollah. And we all know how those weapons were used on October the 7th. The Biden team seemed blind to what was going on. Right before the Hamas attack, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said the Mideast had been quieter than it had been in 2 decades. How wrong can you be? Right after October 7th, our president assured Israel of America's full support. That did not last long. Biden ran into trouble with Muslim and Arab voters in the key state of Michigan, and that full support faded. He's bending to the ceasefire brigade and earning America the reputation of being a fickle friend. This week, Biden placed new sanctions on Iran, but he didn't touch their oil, which goes to China. They still have a lot of money to buy those rockets for their terrorist proxy partners. So where are we now after Israel's attack on Iran last night? A watchdog group says Iran's nuclear capabilities are more dangerous than they have ever been. Biden is pursued everywhere he goes by Hamas supporters, splitting the Democrat Party. Our elite universities have become safe havens for anti-Semites. Hamas has not been fully defeated. And in Iran, the morality police are putting women in prison for not covering their hair. That is the sorry state of Biden's Mideast policy. What a contrast with the good old days of President Trump. Second hour of Varney, just getting started.
And so, first of all, again, non-profit news now. He does all of this, again, to make a profit, and it's obscene. Making profits off of the misery of others is obscene. Secondly, if you're a Democrat, you need to be voting Republican because Democrats are showing right now that they're on the wrong side of history. And the Democrat Party has always been on the wrong side of history, from slavery to Jim Crow to the KKK to lynching to civil rights acts. The Democrat Party is always wrong. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Policecraft.
17. Being off duty. There's no such thing as work-life balance. Everything worth fighting for unbalances your life. Alain de Botton, writer and philosopher. The rules for a cop getting involved in an off-duty incident are pretty simple. You're encouraged to be a good witness, nothing more. You are not expected to swoop in and save the day, especially not by yourself. If you were on the job in uniform, you would think twice before making a solo arrest, and that's with a gun, vest, handcuffs, and radio. So why would you try the same thing when you're away from work with no police equipment, wearing flip-flops, and your Bluth's Original Frozen Banana Stand t-shirt? And with 2 kids in the car. Plus, any time you put yourself on duty, you have to call your lieutenant afterward and write a memo. Who wants that? You're on your weekend, and there are salmon steaks to be grilled and ale to be quaffed. But each officer does some cost-benefit analysis and ends up making his own decision about such matters. I've managed to squelch a few street fights over the years and have made a handful of off-duty arrests for offenses ranging from drunk driving to auto burglary to carjacking. Each time I did so, I was well aware I was rolling the dice and things could go awry. Sometimes your better half makes the call for you before you can advise her against it. "It's okay," my wife, the ultimate peacemaker, once loudly proclaimed when we came upon a group of people in a moderate sidewalk squabble in which I had no intention of intervening. "My husband is a police officer." When I say things can go awry, I'm thinking about the time Rolf Mueller, a mensch if there ever was one, stopped at a gas station for fuel and a newspaper after a long shift and encountered one Thurman Otaris Williams, who was in the process of shoplifting. Although in plain clothes and unarmed, with only his badge in his rear pocket, Rolf identified himself as a police officer and attempted to stop Williams, a 6'1", 240-pound career criminal, some 30 years Rolf's junior. The fight was on. Rolf called for the clerk to dial 911 and tried to get Williams in a headlock, but Williams elbowed Rolf in the chest while yelling at the store clerk to "Get this crazy motherfucker off me." He shoved Rolf into a shelf, tipping over a full pot of coffee, which left first-degree burns on Rolf's left hand. Then Williams reared back and delivered a headbutt to the front of Rolf's skull, a blow that Rolf would later describe to me as devastating. Williams delivered the same headbutt 3 or 4 more times and ran out of the store. Rolf picked himself up and, through the haze of pain, chased Williams on foot. While he was running, Rolf heard something that sounded like footsteps crunching on loose concrete. He looked down. No loose concrete there. He later told me he thinks that sound was the creaking of the bones in his face from the man's vicious blows. When Rolf lost sight of Williams, he returned to the store and directed the responding units to where he'd last seen Williams. Then Rolf sat down. The battle had lasted about 4 minutes, which in fight time is an eternity. Another officer found Williams several blocks away, sweating and out of breath, with fresh abrasions to his elbow and his pockets stuffed with stolen gas station food. Williams' total take from his theft amounted to $17.55. He stole beef sticks, some dip, a Little Debbie snack bar. It was a low-rent offense, one usually handled with a municipal theft citation. Many off-duty officers wouldn't have bothered with it, especially not at 5 in the morning, unarmed, with no backup, facing a younger, larger man. But Rolf had bothered, because he didn't like it when people stole. After identifying Williams and giving a statement, Rolf went to the hospital, where his face had swollen like a bruised balloon. After being treated, he was given a ride home by another officer. He had the officer stop at the same gas station. Rolf still owed them $9 for his fill-up. In a telling twist of fate, Rolf would arrest Williams a few years later on open warrants. Rolf recognized Williams right away, but Williams didn't remember Rolf. The potential was surely there for some payback, but that wasn't what Rolf was about. It turned out to be an uneventful arrest where Rolf treated Williams courteously as he would anyone else, demonstrating professionalism and self-restraint that too few of us have, and some of us don't even understand. If you take off-duty police action, the onus is on you to identify yourself as a cop to the responding officers. You may be in a position to call the police yourself, in which case you can give your rank and department name and a quick self-description so the responding officers don't tackle you by mistake. But if you are in the middle of a fight, you may not have a free hand to dial. That's why if you're going to carry your gun during your days off, you are also required to carry your badge and police ID. When uniformed officers arrive on scene, they may not have any idea who you are, especially if you aren't in your own jurisdiction. And if you have your gun out, you better pray they spot your badge because, 1, the badge can be seen from only one direction. If an officer approaches you from the side or rear, they might see only your gun. 2, the police aren't going to automatically assume you're one of the good guys. And if you try to explain it to them, they may not hear it because they're already screaming at you to drop the gun. That's why best practices call for keeping your gun holstered unless absolutely necessary, and even putting your arms up and or proning yourself out when the on-duty cops show. Basically, you do everything the responding officers tell you to do. You expect to be treated like a suspect until you can definitively establish you're all on the same team. Because friendly fire shootings are the stuff of nightmares. When it comes to carrying a firearm off duty, everybody's different. Some officers have it with them all the time. Some don't want the bother. Others just pack it when they're going to be in the city. I won't enter Oakland or SF without at least 15 rounds. But you can't have it on you if you're going to be drinking, so Friday night with the fellas is out. In the summer, handguns are hard to conceal with just a t-shirt on, and that fanny pack you bought to hide your firearm is the object of your wife's consistent ridicule. Plus, you figure you can survive a Wednesday lunch at a suburban cheesecake factory without a piece. But these are uncertain times. Maybe your waitress's ex-boyfriend shows up to her work with a .38, because if he can't have her, no one can. Perhaps today is the day that odd duck on the corner who's always muttering to himself takes a knife out and slashes the next person who walks by. A host of very bad people with the worst of intentions have been stopped by an off-duty cop with a keen eye and a gun. It's nice to be off work. You walk out the station door and see a police car with lights and siren heading one way, but your shift is over, so you head the other way. Go get 'em, lads. But when you're in law enforcement, your life is not quite your own. Some days, you're just renting it. The department can and will cancel your off days for demonstrations, or Halloween, or for the aftermath of a World Series or Super Bowl win. It drains a little joy out of your team taking the title when you know you're going to have to deal with the boozy exuberance, looting, and late-night violence that follows, all the while being booed by the crowd whenever you take police action as if you represent the opposing team. And because the planning for these events is sometimes a bit haphazard, notifications are often last minute. You may have audaciously made plans on your off days and not wish to come in. That scenario has led to exchanges like this. Lieutenant, I need you in right now, Jorgensen. Jorgensen, I can't come in. I am drunk. Lieutenant, really? It's 10 in the morning on a Sunday. Jorgensen, fakes hiccup. A few guys decide not to answer their phones, which is weak, but effective. They can't make you come in if they can't reach you. If you work investigations, you get called in on your off day if they arrest a suspect on one of your cases. I once interrogated a guy for a serious felony, and when I was done, I went to the bathroom and took note that my face was streaked with transfer glitter from having played with my little girl and her princess dolls earlier in the day. The suspect hadn't mentioned a thing. Maybe because it was San Francisco. When you're driving off duty and see the police have someone pulled over, you automatically slow to watch if the cop needs help, especially if there's only one officer, because backup could be a ways out. And if they do need you, you will stop your car, jump out, and help as best you can. You won't think twice. the officer you are helping would do the same for you. It's a brotherhood. But it's funny, when you're in your car and you see a cop right behind you, you often have the very same thoughts a civilian would. Despite the fact that he is your brother and you would fight to the death at the side of the road to help him, you find yourself asking, what? Did you make an illegal lane change? Are your tabs expired? Why is he all up on you? Back off, Johnny Law. Because you have a job where you make enemies, you adopt a watchful readiness and take care to guard your privacy. You keep your name out of the phone book and your kid's school directory and go through a process of sending certified letters to opt out of public databases, although you have to start this process all over again if you do anything like refinance a mortgage. You recognize the perils of Instagram and Facebook. Some officers I know take different ways home in case anyone is following them. A few wear their gun while mowing the lawn. My foes are all around me. When you're at a restaurant, you sit with your back to the wall, watching the entrance. When I first met my wife, she asked me why I always chose that seat, and I told her. Then I said I did an individualized threat assessment on everyone who entered. I wasn't entirely kidding. I also wanted her to think I was sort of tough. If you live in one of the tonier towns in your county, you may relax this tactical seating policy a bit, but if you're on your game, you won't relax too much. Because look what happened to Wild Bill Hickok the one day he broke tradition. My older daughter understands. That's Daddy's seat. My younger one struggles with the concept, and if there's enough crying, I might relinquish the chair. Okay, young one. Seat's all yours. But I want you to visually screen every person who comes in. Or I guess you can just eat that hot fudge sundae. If you take public transportation, there's a reasonable chance you will see some of the same drug dealers and hustlers you butt heads with on a regular basis now heading home. They put in a full shift today like you, just in a different enterprise. You see them, and they see you. And usually nobody says anything. Sometimes civil nods are even exchanged. A truce. Because the cat and mouse game is done, at least for now, and there's nothing in it for either of you to start it back up prematurely. See you at 9 tomorrow morning, gentlemen. We'll do it all over again. It's no fun being sick or hurt, but it's a little worse when you're a cop. It's not the pain or discomfort so much, although you aren't too high on either of those things. It's the sense of vulnerability, of operating at a quarter speed. You are coughing incessantly. You're drained and listless. I can't feel this way, you think. I am society's protector. But right now, a 10-year-old could dribble you like a basketball. If you saw a crime in progress, you wouldn't have enough energy to stop the suspect. You'd just have to point with a rubbery arm and say, "Hey, cut it out." You feel weak, exposed, unequipped. Like going to an armed robbery in progress without your ballistic vest or shotgun, armed only with your sense of irony. The weekend was nice. You took your kids to the park, and it had the fountain on. You had a pleasant evening out with your wife at a restaurant with mood lighting and key lime pie. You even found time to clean out the garage. Now that's all over with, and it's time to step back in the netherworld. Yesterday, you were rolling around in the yard with your 6-year-old, play wrestling, and today you're on the sidewalk wrestling for real with a drunk called Gotti who has a knife and doesn't like you. 2 different universes, work and home, separated by as much space as you can possibly cram between them. At least, most cops operate that way. Rolf Mueller had a police scanner that he listened to during his off time. "Sometimes I yell at it even when I'm home," he told me. But it doesn't always play out so well, this neat divide. The job has a way of winding itself into your dreams. Police officers have nightmares of shooting people or being shot, often in a scenario where they run out of ammo or their gun malfunctions. I have fallen out of bed on more than one occasion while dreaming I am in a fight with a suspect. One time, I smacked my head on a nightstand on the way down. Or you come home from work to a dinner party your wife is throwing. Good friends are already seated. The food hits the spot. The conversation is amiable and engaging. Problem is, you saw a dead baby that morning and are finding it a little hard to unwind. The other couple is chatting about an art exhibit they saw. You're thinking about how gray that baby's skin was. Someone brings up a new Netflix series. You raised the blanket up, and there he was. He looked just like a doll. How was work? Someone asks. It was fine, you say. You think of the sounds coming out of the mother's mouth, a moan that built to a knife-edge wail. Those around you keep talking about which summer vacation rental makes the most sense and how the back garden is coming along and whether to buy the kids a hamster. And there's no reason why they shouldn't talk about those things. But there you sit, half listening, a stranger at your own table. The next day, you're out and about and see a police recruiting booth at a street fair. It's run by a couple of uniformed cops you don't know. They have shiny nameplates and warm smiles and glossy pamphlets. Their pitch is that police work is both important and interesting. They ask if you're interested in joining. No, you're already on the department, you tell them. You're trying to get out. Where's the booth for that? Why the exit strategy? Accumulated wear and tear. A public that doesn't seem to get it. Blow-dried phonies on the nightly news reporting on your department's most recent shooting and trying desperately to manufacture controversy when there isn't enough to suit them. A growing belief that maybe it isn't healthy to do this job for very long. And too many of the kind of days no one should have. Not just the gray baby you were thinking about at the dinner table. It's the 4-year-old girl in a pile of soiled laundry who's wasted away to 9 pounds from neglect. A drive-by shooting where a random bystander is struck in the head and his brains leak into his baseball cap like soup. A man cut in half by a shotgun blast, still alive for a few more moments, eyes blinking, mouth gaped like a fish. And when your shift is over, you go to your locker and you can't get into it because although you've been using the same lock for the last 2 decades, you don't have the slightest idea what the combination is. You stand there looking at it until you remember, or you get bolt cutters and snap the damn thing off. Then you go home and turn the television on because TV is about all you can manage. You're still doing far better than the victims and their families. And tomorrow, you'll bounce back. But tonight, you just want some time to brood, and you can't be around people. You're watching an NBA game that doesn't hold your interest, so you change the station, and there's a woman in a shampoo commercial shaking her head back and forth, causing her shimmering tresses to flounce about. The commercial shows a computerized simulation of the shampoo pouring over the hair, how it protects and volumizes. Because you deserve it, the shampoo model says. 2 different worlds. One has brain soup in a ball cap. The other, wavy, shimmering hair. 2 worlds that could not be more different. And at that moment, you know one thing for certain. You don't want to be in either one of them.
And that was Policecraft Chapter 17, Being Off Duty by Adam Plantinga. Back in a minute. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there and reminding you that you are not neutral and that the government has no rights.